monthly landlord association meeting. If everybody could start the meeting by silencing their cell phone, so our speakers and our vendors tonight do not have to be interrupted by that. It also always sounds really nice on the recording when he has to edit that. So please silence your phones. Another little reminder is please continue and start to market your properties on the GLA website. Those properties on there, I have some apartment buildings on there right now for sale, and I do get calls off of them being posted on there. So whether you're trying to lease your properties or you're trying to buy or sell a properties, please continue to use that as a resource. Do we have any new members here tonight? Thank you for joining. Welcome to the room. I'm Ed, I'm president. Brian here's the vice president.
How about guests?
Do we have any guests?
I'm a guest.
All right, thank you for coming. Hopefully after tonight you would like to join, and Linda at the front can help you with that. So next up is Terry Hansen with our local government agency update. Please help me welcome Terry to the stage.
This month is Burton is charging a larger water deposit. It's $500 plus another fee for $70. Monmouth Township reduced theirs to the $500 mark, from $700 or $900. The utilities are really getting aggressive on their high water deposits. So you want to make sure what it is, and before you rent your house, and the tenant goes to the water department and finds out it's a whopping figure.
And we were instrumental.
We were instrumental in getting the water deposit reduced in Mount Morris Township. And we may have to do something with Burton, although they've got the numbers. They had a consultant come in Burton, and they're also talking about raising the fees on turn-ons and turn-offs for non-payment and for regular turn-ons.
Would you repeat that again, Terry?
It's about $500 in Burton and Mount Morris Township for a water deposit.
What about Flint?
Flint's been no change.
Okay, 325?
It's the same thing.
Okay.
So I take that as the rest of the out counties are trying to push the people into Flint for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've been beating on Flint on the water deposits, and I think they're a little more reluctant. And they have this support. They want to make sure that it's affordable because the people will just steal the water, and they have a large amount of theft. So they're not really in a good position to raise the water deposits in Flint. And I've heard that they have about a 37% unaccounted for water usage.
Well, Burton was losing money, so that's why they had to call a consultant in to see what was going on and what they should do. So that's the result.
Well, I guess that's better than them being unbelievably profitable on our behalf. All right, so who in the room has gotten their newsletter so far? Anybody got it? Okay.
This month?
This month?
Wait.
Okay. So yeah, some people that don't have email still get hard copies. So if you have not gotten your hard copy that you typically get, that should be there any day now. They got a little delay due to Labor Day. So the next thing we have is Bobby Kirby with our vendors tonight. Please help me welcome Bobby to introduce our vendors.
Okay, fix this out first.
Just don't stand in the light.
Oh, sorry. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I hope that you've been enjoying the last part of your summer and you're ready to rock and roll with the GLA. Because we got a lot of things for the rest of the year. Okay, for tonight, our first vendor is Ace Warehouse, the Helpful Place. And we have Mr. Doug Lane, the store manager. And Doug, would you come up, please? Let's welcome Doug, please.
Well, actually, I'm not from the warehouse, but we do have the Ace Hardware in Grand Blanc. And,
Can't hear you.
can't hear me?
There you go.
Okay. Well, I'm kinda shy anyways. So, but, I do have the hardware in Grand Blanc, and she asked if I would come in and talk about the store. We've been there for 41 years. We do storm screen repairs, rekey locks. Just try to help anybody that needs help that comes into the store. Really not sure what I'm supposed to be talking
Well,
about.
why don't you tell them about the stuff that you offer that Home Depot doesn't? Like the screens?
Well, we,
the other ones?
any storm repairs, screen repairs, we repair the screens. If they have broken sides, we repair the sides, we build screens. We, as far as sliding patio doors, we have them all custom made. So we have a vendor down in Detroit that makes all our storm doors for us, so they're not like the very flimsy ones you get at some of the other places. Anything that anybody needs, we open up catalogs for you to look at pricings, getting special things. As long as we get requests by noon on Tuesdays, we can always have the products for anybody that anybody wants on Thursday.
Do you guys do windows too, or?
We do single pane windows, we don't do thermal pane windows. Usually we'll send everybody down to Liberty Glass because each thermal pane window has to be specially made. And there's no such thing as a common size. I hear that all the time when people ask about screen repairs that come in. What size window do you have? I have the common size window. Well, when you come in, we have probably about 100 screens that are sitting there waiting to be picked up, and they're all different sizes. So there's no such thing as normal or common in this business. But, I mean, is there like other questions or something? I mean,
Can you guys copy keys that say do not duplicate?
we can copy keys that do say do not duplicate because that's just, it's not a request or, it's not something that mainly is against the law to do. Usually security keys are custom keyed with the keyways, not with a stamp that says do not duplicate.
So you can or you can't?
We can if we have a blank,
Okay.
you know. Yeah, if it's a common blank, it's just somebody that stamped
Yeah.
do not duplicate on it.
Yeah.
We do auto keys and things like that if anybody needs them, but, I don't know what else to talk about.
Well, good job.
About it.
You guys- Basically though, you guys are still a full service hardware.
We're full service hardware, family owned hardware. Like I said, we've been there for 41 years. My dad started it at 78. I'm running it now. My son's now into it. So I told him we still got another 30 years to go. Amazon can't put the hardware store out of business. A lot of brick and mortars out.
Thanks for that. Okay, thank you. All right. Our next presenter is, this vendor is Ms. Heather Griffin and Ms. Linda Crawford from the Blight Department, City of Flint. Let's welcome them up.
So, as she said, I'm Heather Griffin, and I work for the Department of Public Works. I'm the sanitation worker. Yeah, that's me. So I brought the Blight Department with us, which is Lindsay Crawford and Raul Garcia. That way they can help filter any questions you may have. I also brought Dwayne Stone, who's the operations manager for Republic Services, who provides our waste hauler servicing for the city of Flint. Most of you probably have a home that you may rent out in Flint, or may even live in the city of Flint. So what we wanted to share with you is some of the issues and positives that are going on with our waste services. There's a lot of other things we could share with you, but we have a short time, and I know you guys all wanna go home tonight. The first thing I want to share though is Ace Hardware also has I'm not gonna say it correctly, and he just told me, when you re-thread piping, for example, I don't know if you guys use any power washers, but my wand broke, and I was able to take it and get it re-threaded so that I could put the nozzle back on it. Gotta be frugal, you know, those things are expensive. So I just want to share that. So that, when they say full service at Ace, that's an example of something you can do, use something you have. So what I wanted to share with you this evening is actually things that pertain to our bulk service. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what bulk service means. It's one of those odd terms, it's an industry term, and it's one that we're trying to get out to the public so that you're aware of what we're requesting. So for you, if you have an eviction, we know that you have some circumstances that makes it a little more difficult. You have to put it out for so many hours before it can be backed up. You find people come through, they pillage. It's a mess by the time it gets back to you again. We are very understanding of that, we understand. If that happens, my card will be here and you are welcome to take that. You can call, let me know, and I'll contact Blight or contact our Blight department, let them know. Just say, hey, we're having a problem, we're getting it backed up. That'll stop any of those violation notices or tickets, because we know you're working on it. If you keep in contact with us and say, hey, we have a problem, not a problem, we're here for you. What's happening is some of the landlords are not being responsible when it comes to that, and it's not just landlords, it's residents as well, or people who are just, you know, walking away from the home. But know that we are here and that we're absolutely willing to work with you, okay? And I know Aaron and I have like a strong relationship because he calls all the time, and we try to come here at least once or twice a year just to share some of these things with you, especially for some of the new landlords in the Flint area. Some of the things that we share with you though is universal. It's gonna be in other communities as well. These terms that we're referencing and some of these services are exactly the same regardless of where you're located. So if it's Burton, if it's Mount Morris, if it's Fenton, the services are gonna be the same regardless of who your waste hauler is. So for us, what we've tried to do, and Aaron had asked me to do this for you, it is an extremely rough draft, and I did bring copies here, and then usually what I do is I send things electronic to Linda, and then she'll forward them to you in your emails if you would like a copy of some of the material that I bring. One of them is talking about the bulk pickups. So I actually put on here, my thought was, if most people don't know what bulk is because they're calling me and asking me for a ball pickup, or a bald pickup, or you know, it's anything but B-U-L-K. And so you have to decipher what that means. But they're hearing it and then repeating what they think they heard. So we're trying to get the terms out there, and so this paper is that helper. I do encourage anything that I bring that you share with your tenants. I know some people don't want to waste the paper, but you can always do it electronically as well if you have that kind of relationship with that tenant. But this explains exactly what bulk means. So we started it with, do you have a large amount of trash that needs to be picked up? Well, you might need a bulk pickup. And then it gives information to what that means, how it needs to be contained, how to call and get it scheduled, and what it entails. So again, that's a draft copy of it, but we're gonna update it probably a little bit, but it's pretty set verbiage, I guess. The other problem that we're having when we're talking about evictions, it's not only evictions, it's just trash in general. And it may not be that the landlord's even aware that it's happening, but the tenant may not understand what it means and how it is to contain their trash properly and put it to the curb. So this is another example. We also know that there's different dynamics in the city of Flint and in any other population. Some people are more in tune with pictures. I'm tactile and I'm visual, so if I can see it and touch it, it makes absolute sense to me. If you verbally tell me something, I'm like, okay, you're going to show me. So I'm aware of that, and I try to get material out the same that goes out to the people that may have an interest in some of this information. So for this form, it's actually a properly prepared curbside refuse. And then I put, That just sounds like a whole bunch of words, right? So again, there are terms that are used in the industry that we want to share with the community so when they hear it, it makes sense what we're saying. And then Aaron had also asked me to put it in black and white, so that's why this copy's black and white, but the one that comes electronically to you, if you want it, is actually in color so you can see it better. And again, this is another draft, but it gives you an example of when we say contained and when we say uncontained, an example of what that looks like. So going back to the bulk pickup, once you have 25 bags or more, or 3 large items or more, you need a bulk pickup. If an item is, and this is becoming very popular in our community, and I'm sure it's maybe happening in others, people are putting things out in cardboard boxes. That is not contained. And I don't think people are aware of that. Or they'll hear about carpeting, for example. Most people know you gotta cut the carpeting, you gotta wrap it up, you gotta tie it. Well, what we're finding is that they'll roll up the carpeting, fold it and try, and then put a string around it and lay it out. Okay, that's a 150-pound carpet that you expect a person to pick up, and our limitation's 50. So was it contained appropriately? It was a good attempt, but we need to get more information out and share more information of how that needs to be contained. And again, industry term of how the items need to be put to the curb. So we put some pictures on here too to give an example of what that looks like. We also tried to put some definitions. So for example, for the curbside refuse, if you properly contain it, you're looking at everything being put in a garbage bag that can fit, okay? The bags should be stacked no higher than 2 bags on top of each other, and then 2 rows back. So what happens is you'll look back and it'll look like a jungle gym. It'll be about 15 feet tall, and there'll be things that are sticking out that you're not even quite sure what it was, but it was something, and it might have been white, or it could have been red, maybe, if the paint's still there. So that's the thing that happens. These drivers, and I guess what I ask is that you put yourself in the driver's situation. If you were a single driver in a truck, and your requirement is that you have to fill your truck with whatever is at the curb, because that's what our current contract is with the city of Flint. If you put it out, we're supposed to pick it up, right? Or it's supposed to be picked up. But it has to be contained, and we have all those little sub-rules that need to be followed in order for it to be picked up. So if you have 150 bags out there, you have a complete eviction of bedbug material out there, and then you have carpeting because you decided to recarpet the entire house. It is impossible for one person to pick up that much weight, that much material, and that much parasite infested material as well. So that's where we can help you. If you run into a situation and you're trying to figure out how do I get this out, how do I maintain this, how do I contain it, how does it, call the blight department, call myself, call Republic Services. Several of you have some of our numbers already. Let us help you work through it, because that's what's gonna stop the violation notifications. It's gonna stop us harassing you, leaving the NSOs leaving notes on things, Republic putting oops tags on the material that they're not gonna pick up. It's very simple on how it can be processed, and you'll only have to do it once. Understandably, sometimes people pillage, and we know that they rip the bags open, and that happens. But unfortunately, for bulk pickup specifically, until the truck gets there, you're gonna have to watch it until the truck gets there. And unfortunately, that happens, like I said, everywhere. So with that in mind, this is an updated flyer that we've developed. And I've had several conversations about how to best get this material out. We're trying to get it out kind of slowly and get people used to the idea. And what it is, it's just saying that the mattresses need to be wrapped in plastic and put to the curb. Is it an ordinance or is it a law? No. What happens is we are becoming, not only in the city of Flint, because I have material actually from Quebec, Canada. We actually have not necessarily an epidemic, but for lack of a better term, an epidemic of bed bugs. And these bed bugs are worldwide. They're coming in on airplanes, they're coming in on buses, they're coming in on your luggage, hotel rooms. I mean, they're coming from everywhere. So it's not just because it's in your home. The reason I bring it up is because what I'm hearing as I'm talking to people, especially tenants that are moving out, just in 2019, I probably had 4 or 5 conversations with residents, or renters, I should say, that were leaving a residence because it had bed bugs. So now I'm gonna go to this landlord and I'm renting that house. Well, what happened with all the material? Well, no, I got rid of the bed. Okay, so people really think that bed bugs are only on your bed. And I mean, it's not, I mean, it's, you know, we kind of giggle a little bit because you're like, that doesn't seem right, but it's a bed bug. It makes sense, right? If you don't know any different, you know, or I'm dirty. No, it's not because you're dirty. If you have blood, you're it. No problem, right? The bed bug's gonna love you. So I have a bunch of material that I will be sharing electronically as well that I also brought, explaining to, it could be something that you can share with your renter. It could be something just for your own safety, you know, to look at what you wanna do, especially when you have to go in and maintain that property later or hire somebody to go in. When you hire somebody to go in, they need to be aware of what they're doing or they're gonna take it to your next house. It only takes one to lay so many eggs. It's just ridiculous. So what I did was, there's like this. This is something that is absolutely free. You can actually go online and you can order them. That's how I order them. They only let me get this particular booklet 10 at a time, but you can actually print it off. So if you have an incident, you can share this kind of resource with your renter or the person who's helping maintain the home for you. If you had a handyman or whatever, it's one way of doing it and to give them an example. It also would give you a resource on how to share and manage it back to them.
What is that you have, we can't
Oh,
see.
this is just one example of a resource that I have about bed bugs.
What is it?
This particular one is called Getting the Bed Bugs Out. It's a guide to controlling bed bugs in your home. This is actually a partnership of the, and I don't have my glasses on, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. So HIDHHS is the initial, with the Michigan State Extension. This is one of the resources that they have. There's multiple resources. There's things like here, how to move and leave bed bugs behind. That can be really important. You know, if you know someone's moving to your home, just say, hey, did you know? Feel free to give things to people. That way maybe you don't have to deal with it when they come to your home. Bed bug management, it's kind of like a follow. You can decide, okay, is this happening? Go this way. If it's not happening, go that way. And it gives you some resources on how to manage them. The other example I brought for you guys. Oh, yep.
Can you tell me what website is the Michigan what
It's actually, where these ones are located is through the, it's the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. But that'll all go to you, if you have an email, I'll send it to Linda or to Aaron and they'll send it to your emails. And I can send all of these things to you, okay?
So make
Yep.
sure we have your emails.
Yeah, so make sure that they have your emails. If not, my card will be here, you can always call me. I do have some in my office, you're always welcome to pick it up if you come up to the city. One thing I did bring for you guys is just an example. I always encourage, and this is kind of off the cuff, because I always push recycling usually when I come here. And just for the record, I did bring these too, so you can share with your tenants on how to sign up for recycling. Little spoof there. But I did bring an example of an addendum that you can attach to your contract about bed bugs. So actually have that tenant sign it and say, okay, this is what you have to do. If you have bed bugs, or if you come across something, this is what I need you to do, right? Because the biggest thing about bed bugs is keeping them contained.
Is that something, are you gonna share that with Linda?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And like I said, it's just an example. It's just a resource that I found, and whenever I have it, I try to share it with people. This is another resource. It's from the Getting the Bed Bugs Out. It's from this same site, and it's a trifold. And these I actually printed off, but you can also get these sent to you. Like I said, I can only get so many at a time, so that I had to print them off because they run out. But what's really nice about this one, this is a small trifold. It's another thing I encourage for you that you can put in with your contract when you get a tenant. Just say, hey, you know, our house is clean. Don't worry about that. But understand that if you run into a situation, we need to know so we can nip it in the bud. This is an example of what you could do as a resource to manage the bed bugs before they get out of hand. If you've ever seen them get out of hand, $3,000 or more. Okay, because the first time they come in and spray, it's $1,500. That's if you're lucky. Now, if the person's still renting the home, they may still have it, if they don't comply with what you need them to do, you know, like put their clothes in the dryer and run it for so much time to keep the heat up. Or, you know, put things in bags and put it down in the basement and leave it there for X amount of days, which is like 90 days or something like that. If they're not doing their part, the bed bugs aren't going anywhere, even if you spray and spray and spray and spray. So this is where it can help you, especially if you've ever run into this issue. And again, it's not because someone's dirty, they may have just picked it up from a friend. I spoke with a lady recently who is an elderly lady who's in a wheelchair, and her granddaughter's friend brought them over, so she was not pleased. Yeah, so here she is stuck in a wheelchair, she has no place to go and no other resources, and she's stuck in the house with the bed bugs until they can figure out how to get rid of them, because she didn't have a financial resource. So anyway, the reason I brought this one up, this little trifold that you could share with your renters, is that they also have it in Arabic and Spanish. We have a predominant group of people in the city of Flint that have both of those languages, and it is a slight barrier. So just know that this one in particular is really nice if you have some tenants that speak other languages. The other thing I wanted to share, because I like to push the recycling thing, is the Genesee Recycle Day. When you have tenants that are there, you have stuff that can't go to the curbside. So for example, if you have oil-based paint, it does not go to the curbside. That cannot be sent to our waste hauler or to our landfill. Now latex paint, yes. Latex paint, you take the lid off, you let it dry, and then you can dispose of it. However, if it's still good, you could always take it to Habitat for Humanity, and then it's recycled and it's sold through the Habitat store. So with that in mind, these are alternatives for those hard to recycle or hard to dispose of items. So the next Recycle Day event is actually, what is today? The 9th, isn't it? 9th. So we have one tomorrow. You are not able to take tires or appliances to the one tomorrow, but it's at Mott Community College in parking lot 5, and you just drive up, and whatever items you have, they'll pull it right out of your car for you. It's from 2 to 6. So I have some of these supplies here as well, if you have some hard to get rid of items. When it's odd time of the year, that's where this one comes in. This is a Genesee County waste drop-off location, and it's a whole bunch of other resources. So automotive waste, electronic waste, household waste, pill drops, yard waste, where you can take it when it's off-season after the Bag-It program ends. Just for the record, the Bag-It program ends November 22nd. So it'll be the week before Thanksgiving is the last day of the Bag-It program. So all the yard waste and compostable material needs to be occurred before then. Yes, sir?
And just in case you can't make it tomorrow, is there another date?
There is. The actual big event where then you can bring the tires and the large appliances and the items that are hard to do or to dispose of, that will actually be October, I do not have my glasses on, I'm so sorry, October 12th. And that runs from 10 till 2. However, what they've changed this year is if you do have old appliances that you're trying to get rid of, especially like a refrigerator, something that has Freon that you can't just dispose or you can't just scrap, it'll run the whole month. So starting September 1st through October 12th, you can take the items over to, I think it's GFL, or what they call Green for Life, and that's appliances only. During that whole month, you can take them there and they'll pull them out with a forklift and put them into a trailer. So that's on here as well. So that's something that did change this year. It does have on the back the items that you can take and where to take them.
One last question.
Yes.
As far as the location, for October 12th.
For October 12th,
Where's the location?
that's actually, the one that stays in town will always be at the Water Service Center. That's our City of Flint Water Service Center. That's always at that same location. That one is actually 3310 East Court Street. What happens is there's an out county one too, and that's the one that travels. So depending on what time it is, it'll change on what time of the year. So the one that's in October will actually be at the Clio High School. So, but again, when they have it next year in June, it'll be a whole different location. So the out county one will always travel, and then the City of Flint one will stay within the Water Service Center. Open to anybody. It doesn't matter where you're located, just Genesee County. So I do have, like I said, I have Dwayne here from our Public Services, and I have Raul and Lindsay from the Light Department. Feel free if you have some questions, I can ask them to come up, or they can answer them from there, or you guys are easy going, I love it. Yes, ma'am?
I have a question. Flint seems to have a problem with tires.
Yes.
So I know that you mentioned that tires were on this particular upcoming recycle.
Yes.
Event. Do people commonly bring their tires there? And if they do, then why are tires in abandoned homes or outside of the homes? And have we, so that's two questions. And then the third would be, I'll let you answer Ron, have we ever considered writing a grant to buy back tires? So we take back guns. Can we do something that we can pay people to bring tires somewhere so that they're not subject to deterioration around the city?
Okay, so it's kind of like a trifold on that one, fivefold maybe. I'm gonna give you the quick version, then I'll let Raul answer, because Raul is the man out there dealing with that. So first answer to the question about the tire buyback, we have been doing that for 5 years. We have. In the month, this year we did it in May, usually we do it June, but what happened is the recycle day event, because they switched theirs this year, it messed up our day, so we had to do ours a little earlier, we did ours in May. My department actually has a tire buyback program. We pay you $1 per tire, up to 25 tires. And you bring it over to environmental rubber, and we look at your license, you have to be a Flint resident. So not meaning that you live, that your license says Flint, Michigan, you have to actually be a city of Flint resident. Because a lot of people live, Flint Township, and it says Flint, that doesn't count, because we know the boundaries. So but you can come and you pay a discounted rate if you live outside of the city of Flint. Because normally it's about $5 per tire for just a standard vehicle tire, or a small or light truck tire. It's about $5. And if you come in, I think we only charged, was it $2? Yeah, it was like $2 this year that we charged for people who were like in Mount Morris or something. So that was part of the question for that. What we find, I'm gonna let Raul actually talk about this a little bit, because I already see with his smile that he feels the pain that you're suggesting right now.
No problem.
So Raul, come up here and share your tire story.
Well, I don't think I need a microphone, I think I'm very loud. Yeah, we have it once a year. The reason that we used to pay more, what would happen was a lot of these, day by night, used tire shops would dump in them, and that's who's dumping all these tires. And I know that I just pulled out.
The unlicensed
504
tire
tires
companies.
from a property last week, that I know came from a shop because they're all marked there, the size and all that. But people are afraid to turn them in, or they're doing it late at night. I got a house right now on, Ballinger and, Brown, I think, in that area. It's got 500 tires in it.
Zimmerman has some tires too.
So unless we turn these people in, it's gonna, to me, it's like an epidemic. It's just, I could pick up tires all day long. It's never gonna hit. No.
Dumps from there.
Who?
Dumps from there.
That's correct. In order for, public to pick up a tire, it has to be, the sidewalls has to be cut out, and the tire has to be cut in quarters.
Did everybody hear Dwayne? The question was, can you throw a tire away, or can it just go in the dumpster, or can it just go in the landfill? And his response is?
Yeah, forgive me, my voice is a little scratchy, but the sidewalls have to be cut out, and the tires have to be cut in quarters, if you wanna take a tire to the landfill.
I'm not sure if any of you have ever experienced that, but I used to run a nature park, and I had to like pull one off of a tree with a Sawzall. It's not easy.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I've had the city of Burton tell me that they'll pick up tires if you cut them in half.
Yep, not Republic, and they're not accepted at our landfill, excuse me, at our landfill, it's just cut in half.
What I'm learning from being in this industry is that people will tell you that they have a certain rule or a certain allowance of what they can accept. It may not be legal. So knowing what our state law is will answer some of those questions for you. Yes, sir.
A couple of years ago, before they went with $25 limit, everybody was picking up tires, and I used to see guys driving around looking for tires. And if they're any on my property, I'd be glad to just flag them down and give them the tires. Why not increase that, and you can get some of these people, just like you drive around on junk days looking for metal, they drive around for the tires, and they'll take those tires.
So.
Now, as far as dumping, my mom lives not far from the vacant house, and we're out there all the time. And you know what, somebody came by, and there's a tire shop around the corner, but it's next to impossible to find them. They dump in the middle of the night, and if you do hear them when you get up, they're gone. You have to have a camera basically on every street to see when they dump it. But they don't dump in broad daylight, you know, you'll see it not there one day and go out the next day and there's a pile of tires there. And it's right, it's 20, 30 tires at a time, so it's gotta be a shop or something.
Yeah.
But during the pickup times, if you increase that, a lot of people out there will pick tires up.
We agree. But just to give you, I guess, an understanding, the money that we have pulled aside for that, to coordinate those efforts, it's a lot more than what we're just giving you. We also have to pay the company that's gonna be disposing of them. So those fees, or whatever you think we're putting out, it doubles. And then you also have to pay for staff that can be there and find volunteers. And it's a very, very big, I mean, we work on it 6 months before we have the event. So where's the funding come from? Well, what we do is we have to cut some other areas so that we can have enough to provide that each year for our residents. We agree it would be wonderful to be able to put more money out there, and we are looking into some other opportunities right now. Something that will cut back on some of the fees, but it wouldn't necessarily be a tire buyback, but it would be a collection. The other thing is yearly usually, and that kind of changes back and forth, the DEQ, which is now called Eagle, they have different grant opportunities, and one of them is working with our police department. So that is something that hopefully we can coordinate, if not this year, next year, and it has to do with cameras. So what happens with the cameras, if you have the trail cam, which is what we would propose, is to have a real-time camera that you can pull off on your cell phone. And I've actually had this conversation, we had a really large dumping meeting. We brought in everybody you could think of that have any effort or any interest of dumping concerns in the city, and we came in and just tried to brainstorm. So one of our officers was there, and it was brought to his attention that we suggested maybe do this grant that would incorporate the police department with our dumping issues using cameras. Well, it is something that they had checked into and that they had tried at different levels. Our problem is our residents are scared. So if you're in an area where you're dumping, it's usually secluded a little bit. It might be a more of a blighted area. It might be an area where maybe the lights aren't as bright. It might be an elderly person that's lived there for 60 years and doesn't want to leave, even though it's not really a safe environment. There's all different circumstances to where these tires are coming from and where they're being dumped. So at that point, you have to figure out, okay, now what do we do? Well, if they are the ones that monitor the camera, they have to go to court. As soon as you tell them, they're like, nope, I didn't see nothing. So we're still trying to figure out how to do that. That's where that real-time camera might work, but now you're looking at $200 per camera. So it's a coordinated effort. We would work with our blight department, and we would work with Republic Services to determine where they're seeing these issues, and hopefully get maybe 10 cameras that will coordinate with the police officers, and they would be the ones, the parties responsible for going to court if we find people dumping. So the other thing is people steal the cameras. But yeah. So did I answer all the questions?
Well,
Did I-
let me ask one question real quick.
Yeah.
What's the solution for all these mattresses that are all over Flint? I mean,
So-
is there a solution that you guys have come up with for picking them up, or what?
It's not the problem with being picked up. Absolutely, they'll pick them up. The problem
I
is
know,
they're
but
usually
I'm-
bed bugs.
I know, but people aren't grabbing them.
Exactly.
And so they're just dumping them everywhere,
Yep.
and they're every.
So Raul, would you like to tell what you have to do when you run across that?
They dumped them before
Yeah.
you required them to, wrap them.
We've always required it. We've just never put paperwork out on it.
Well, I mean,
So-
Flint is just inundated
Yeah.
with mattresses everywhere. So one.
It's bed bugs.
One thing, well,
It's
yeah,
bed bugs.
too, but one thing that cause I have a block club,
Mhm.
and we had thought about, okay, if the driver writes down where the mattresses are, maybe the city of Flint can come with the claw and on the weekend and pick them up.
Well, that's exactly what we do.
Oh, okay, well, I don't know, but.
That answers the question,
Oh,
and you
okay.
see, you already know the answer.
Oh,
It's
okay.
what happens is it is a health hazard. Our employees are not gonna touch it, Republic Services their employees are not gonna touch it. So how do we do it and stay healthy? So, I mean, it only takes one. I have a really good story that I probably shouldn't tell, but if you've ever experienced taking bed bugs home, you don't ever wanna do it again. So it only takes once.
But it's not
Yeah.
only in the mattresses, it's in the furniture too, so are
Correct.
they picking the furniture up or?
Not if they see bed bugs. If it's on the mattress, it's on the furniture, no, it's gotta be wrapped. If it's at a residence, we will give notification, we will ask that they wrap it. If it's in a place where they've dumped it, then we have to look at coordinated efforts. A lot of times though, we're very fortunate that we do have residents that will tell us who did it. And so when that happens, Raul is the man. He will find them and he will make sure that they pay for that. So, okay.
Thank you for coming. You did a great job. Please get Linda all that stuff. All right, so our main speaker tonight is Sergeant's Title, so please help me welcome them.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Hoffman from Sargent's Title Company, and tonight I have with me our owner, Mike Sargent, and Shelley Haddon, one of our top title officers. She's been with the company for 20 years, so if I can't answer your questions, they could probably help me answer them. We'd like to thank you for welcoming us here tonight to talk about title insurance, and I'll try not to keep you here too long. So, what is title insurance? Buying real estate is a big investment, and title insurance will protect your real estate owners and lenders against any property losses or damages that you might experience because of a lien, encumbrance, or defect in the title to the property. Each title insurance policy is subject to some terms and conditions, but we do with the title policy give you an insurance against any losses or indemnifications because of damages. Could be because mortgage was missed when we did the research, delinquent taxes were missed at the closing. Those are things that we might take care of for you if they were part of the public record. So what do we not cover with a title insurance property? The market value of the property, the acreage, the square footage, and the area of the property, and the property address. Basically what we're insuring is the legal description. We make sure what you're buying is what you're really buying. So what is our job? The job of the title company is to make sure that the piece of real estate that you're buying is in fact what you're really buying, that the proper person signed the proper documents, they were the proper seller to the property. We issue the title policy guaranteeing that your property is free and clear from all defects and liens. And we act as a neutral party in the transaction. Our insurance premiums are regulated by the state of Michigan's Insurance Commission. So pretty much every title insurance company has the same premiums. A large chunk of your premium that you do pay goes towards all that legal legwork to make sure that what we're doing is correct. And you do as a consumer do have the right to pick your, who your title insurance company is gonna be when you pay for it. So why buy title insurance? It's risk reduction. Make sure that you have marketable title to your property. The seller has the legal right to sell the property. Any missed defects in the chain of title, we're on the hook for that, not you as a consumer. Most claims are really costly and cost a lot of money, so that's why you buy the insurance. Your deed might not guarantee all of your rights as ownership into the property. There are different kinds of deeds that you get to property. One's a quitclaim deed. That doesn't guarantee that the property's free and clear. Some of your covenant deeds only cover from the time that person owned the property to the time they sold it to you. And you can also get expanded coverage on your title insurance property or on your title insurance policy to cover more than just some of the ownership rights to help reduce that risk reduction. And a lot of times people think, well, my lender got a title insurance policy, why do I need to buy one? Well, the lender title insurance policy only protects the lender, so if there is a defect, the lender will be protected, you won't be. So what is the difference between clear and clouded title? Our title searches go back several decades. Average is about 40 years on a title search. And we make sure that each link from each owner to owner was proper. that the proper people deeded it and that there's no missing links in that chain of title. It's not uncommon for us to find something that's wrong, on the title insurance, which would make the cloud of title a defect. What are common defects? Prior deed has a misprinted or misspelled legal description. How do we fix that? Well, we go to the person who prepared the deed, have them file a scrivener's affidavit to make the correction, or we may have to get a new deed signed by the parties. Outstanding mortgage hasn't been paid off or discharged. We go about that by contacting the person who paid it off to see if they have some kind of receipt, or we contact the lender. Sometimes it's been paid off, the lender just forgot to file that discharge. It happens a lot when banks get sold. Outstanding delinquent taxes, those are always a lien on the property and they have to be paid off. Pending lawsuits, divorces, or bankruptcies, those sometimes will cloud the title. We would have to look at the divorce. Bankruptcies, we have to get orders from the bankruptcy court to sell the property. Any pending lawsuits can stop the sale of a property. Outstanding contractor liens, that's where Goyette put in a furnace and the seller didn't pay for it, and they slap a lien against your property there for the work. Sometimes we come across, the seller says they inherited the property, they've got a will. Well, that doesn't legally make them the owner of the property. They have to go through the courts with that will to make sure they get legal title to the property. There might be a break in the chain of title. A sold to B, C sold to D, so on and so forth, but somewhere along the line, somebody didn't record a deed. We have to go back and get that deed recorded into the chain of title to make sure the proper conveyances are done throughout. So what are some of our title exceptions? Items not shown on public record, unrecorded deed, an unrecorded easement. Example would be that, the owner of the property gave an easement to their neighbor to drive across the property to get to a garage. It's not recorded, we wouldn't know about it, they don't disclose it at the sale of the property. And that neighbor is always happy to come over and tell you after the closing that, hey, I have the right to drive across your property and you didn't know it. That's something that we wouldn't cover because it's not part of the public record. Encroachments, overlaps on the boundary lines, that's where your shed might be on your neighbor's property by 4 feet or 4 inches. Unless a survey was done, we wouldn't know it. Liens for services, like I said, seller had a furnace put in, 6 months, same as cash, they sold the property in that 6 months. And all of a sudden after the closing, Goyette's knocking on your door saying, hey, somebody owes me for this furnace or I'm gonna take it out. So those are things we don't cover because they're not part of the public record and nobody made us aware of it. Taxes, special assessments. When you buy a piece of property, we pay all the taxes up to the date of closing. Right now, we would pay those summer 19 taxes. We don't charge for the 19 winter taxes because they're not part of the assessment yet on the property. They don't come out till December 1st. We've seen before where the seller knew that the township was going to assess the property for a road assessment. But it wasn't made part of the public record because it wasn't going to start until a certain time frame. And then all of a sudden after closing, the buyer gets that notice. If it's not a part of the public record yet, we don't know about it, so it's not covered by your title insurance policy. Rights of the government. Those are for roads, sidewalks of your street between your house and the road. Those things we can't cover. Drains and utilities. You're gonna have easements on your property for your consumer's power, your water lines, your cable lines, telephone lines. Those are things that we don't cover on the title policy, but they're things that they're there because you want to have those rights to your property to be able to have gas and electricity. Mineral rights, if your mineral rights are not recorded and they're not part of that public record, then they're not covered on your title policy. They have to be part of the public record for us to cover it. In the Subdivision Control Act of 1967, That primarily covers, that the builder did things right, the lot sizes are right in the neighborhood. Things were done properly with the township, those are things that we don't look into. They should have been done by the township and the builder of that subdivision, whoever developed it. Those are things that are not covered by your title insurance policy. So one of the things I want to do, here at the beginning, Erin and I had talked on the phone. I know a lot of investors go to the land bank auction and buy a piece of property through their auction. And a lot of investors don't realize you're not getting clear title to that property. What you're getting from the land bank is a quitclaim deed, and it's for that tax lien. And unfortunately, when you take that quitclaim deed, you inherit everything that that homeowner had. Any IRS liens, tax liens, contractor liens, and so forth. They don't clear those titles up. Now, some properties they do clear up, but they do those through private sales. You might see where they've got open houses for certain properties they list. I know Ed does a lot of their commercial deals. They've actually gone through the court system and cleared those titles up, and they have marketable titles. However, if you go to their land auction, you're gonna inherit all those things. Same thing with sheriff's sale at the courthouse. If you go down there and make a bid on that sheriff's deed, take that property, you're gonna inherit the problems that went along with it. Because it's not gone through the judicial system for the court to say everything's wiped out. So through one of our underwriters, we have what we call a tax title review service. And what that does is it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to complete. Our underwriters will take the following documents from us. We do a 40-year title search. We get the foreclosure packet from the entity through the Freedom of Information Act and the Declaration of Possession. They take some 2 to 3 weeks to review it, and they'll make a determination if they can insure that title to the property or if they can't insure it to the property. The cost ranges from $600 to $1,000 for them to do it. It's $400 at the time of the order. It's not guaranteed that they can insure it. It depends on what's there, and how the foreclosure process was done through the tax sale. And in addition to that, if you had a buyer, you would pay the cost of a title policy. So that's a service that we offer through our underwriters. We do have a lot of investors that do this. They come in, they bought a property at auction down at the sheriff's sale or from the land bank, and they immediately come in and say, here's my money, see what the problems are. And then we go through that process. This is a little bit cheaper than having to go to court, get an attorney, and going to clear the title up. But it's a service we offer. And the $600 to $1,000 just depends on what we have to do. Sometimes it might, especially your commercial deals, we might have to dig into a little bit more with leases and so forth that were recorded on the property. So this is something that we have out there for you guys, the product. So title insurance commitments, I left examples on your tables there, what a title insurance commitment looks like. We can just kind of go through what the nuts and bolts of them are. Schedule A, which is your first page, is the who, what, and where, and how much of the transaction. It'll show who your buyer is, the effective date of the commitment, which is usually the day that when we've done the research is the day that the county has at the public records. The register of deeds is recorded through this date. So that'll be your effective date. It'll show who is going to be insured, which is your buyer. Then it shows who our fee simple or leasehold owner is of the property. It'll show who our lender is, if the buyer's getting a mortgage, how much the sales price is, which will be your title policy amount, and the lender's amount for the mortgage. It also shows a legal description of the property, which usually gets transferred to Schedule C because it's long and won't fit on that first page there. The next page, Schedule B, Section 1. This here shows what's going to be needed to be done in order to close that transaction, what we're gonna need, if we have to pay off any interest in the property through a mortgage, we have to pay for the title insurance premium. Any required documents that we might need for that transfer, might be an estate, so we need, letters of authority from the court, we might need a court order. If there's, like we said, the contractors, something that's unrecorded that you know about, you need to let us know about it. To make the top policy good, the deed or the mortgage has to be recorded. We might have requirements because you bought that property for $10,000 and 3 months later you're selling it for $100,000. You've done some work on the property, obviously. So we're gonna need contractor liens, sworn statements, from the people that did the work on the property, just guaranteeing that there's no liens against the property. That's a big one sometimes we see with flippers. They bought the house and 30 days later they're selling it for $80,000 more than what they bought it. So obviously they've done something there. Schedule B, continues to requirements. We might need a survey. Buyer might want certain exceptions removed from the policy, so we might need a survey to remove those exceptions from the policy. We always have an owner's affidavit and sewer and water affidavit signed by all parties. Usually the owner's affidavit says that they don't know of any liens out there. They don't know of anybody filing lien against the property, they're not in bankruptcy, they're not under a lawsuit of any kind, they've paid for all their contractor work. The legal description, we use the legal description that's of public record. If the property's been recently split, we will need to see that survey to get that new legal description for the property. But we usually use whatever's on the tax roll for a legal description for that parcel. We might require any all current delinquent taxes to be paid off. And then there's a new clause that's been in the title policies for a couple of years. It's the Mary Jane clause. It has to do with marijuana. And I will go through that in a couple minutes with you guys. Section 2 of Schedule B, those are the exceptions. These are the things that we don't cover on the title policy, such as easements, claims of easements, encroachments, boundary line disputes, liens that didn't show in the public record at the time, taxes or special assessments that didn't show in the property at the time of sale, encumbrances, adverse claims that didn't show in the public record. And then there's two different kinds of title policies that you can buy. An Alta, which is your standard title policy, and an Eagle policy. An Eagle policy can remove some of those standard exceptions. However, there are certain rules for those as well. It has to be residential properties only. The policy can only cover an owner-occupied property. We can do it without a survey. However, it does not cover commercial properties, new constructions, your rental or income properties. And this shows you what the difference between an Eagle and Alta policy is. You can see an Alta policy doesn't cover a lot of things here, such as forgery, where an Eagle policy would. Different types of things here. There are some limitations on subdivision violations. And it does give you an automatic increase in your coverage for the next 5 years after you've taken out the policy. So what is the Mary Jane clause? I was just talking with Henry about this a couple minutes ago. Even though marijuana is legal in the state of Michigan, it is not legal by the federal government. So we have to put this clause in all title insurance policies that due to conflict between federal and state laws, we cannot insure transactions. There's a lot of contradictions in the laws right now. They change every day. The one thing we were talking about is a lot of the townships and cities right now are putting ordinances in places where you can't grow shops or you can't grow marijuana. They're making it hard. The federal law classifies marijuana as a controlled substance. It's a Schedule 1 drug. It's no different than heroin. And the law states that anyone that helps anyone with, the sale of marijuana or anything to do with it is subject to also the act. So from 2013 to 2017, the Justice Department tolerated it. In states that where it was legal, they weren't gonna do anything about it. There was a memo that covered all that, the Cole memo. However, in 2018, Jeff Sessions reversed that Cole memo, which set everybody kind of in a little bit of a tizzy. Because basically what it did was, in the real estate market, anybody that was involved in the transaction was now party to, federal law, and we could be, prosecuted. So, you'll find that most of your transactions will be cash only contract sales, and they're handled by attorneys. They do a title search. And we usually know that it's a transaction that involves marijuana because it's the grow shop selling it to something else that has to do with marijuana. If it's John Smith selling to Bob Jones, there's no red flag there. But when your purchase agreement transaction says something, we, along with the banks, have to back off because we are federally regulated and we can't be party to it. However, earlier this year, the federal government, they have several bills on the floor right now. Nothing has been passed to change the act, the Substance Control Act, to remove marijuana and to allow it to be regulated from state to state, but nothing's passed as of yet. And like I said, this is just ever changing every day. The laws change every day, the ordinances change every day. The state of Michigan passed this law, but they kind of were not ready for it. Things were put in place, so when we voted for it, went into effect, per se. So everybody's still playing catch up a little bit. But, like I said, if we know it has something to do with marijuana, we cannot close it. The banks won't even mess with it as well either. Another thing we wanted to bring up here with you today, dowry rights. This has kind of been in effect for the last couple of years. Some of you might have known if a husband owned a piece of property, he couldn't sell it without his wife's permission. He could buy it all day long, he couldn't sell it without her permission. In 2016, we changed the laws here in Michigan, primarily because of the evolution of marriage, even the playing field between men and women, and because same-sex marriages became legal, and the state couldn't determine who had the dowry rights in the marriage. So like I said, in 2016, Michigan legislature passed the law, the governor signed it in 2017, and on April 6, 2017, the dowry laws were abolished. What that meant was on April 6, 2017, any men that owned a piece of property, their wives no longer had rights to their property. However, if they had passed away prior to April 6th, she still was able to keep her rights, but she had to do through the estate courts. She had to go through probate to do that. I just went through how that all worked. So now, when you buy a piece of property, if you buy it in just your name, your wife doesn't have to no longer sign for everything. However, there is one caveat, that if it's your primary residence, Michigan has what they call a homestead law. And what that means is there's laws to protect your homestead from creditors. So if you're gonna mortgage your primary residence, your lender's going to require that your wife sign that mortgage. It just puts her on notice that she knows that you're getting a mortgage. If you pass away, that she may lose that house because of that mortgage if she doesn't make the payments and so forth. The creditors could take the property. So we wanted to share with you common ways that you can hold title to your property. I'm sure some of you as investors might have LLCs. So the first one is tenants by the entireties. This has to do with husbands and wives and how you hold the title. One example is John and Mary Smith, husband and wife, or John Smith and Mary Smith, his wife. What this means is you hold title by tenants and entireties. John passes away, Mary can record John's death certificate, and she owns the property. Totally herself, she doesn't have to go to probate court or anything like that. That husband and wife or his wife will automatically help with that. However, if that's missing, then they each own 1/2 interest in the property, and then you do have to deal with estate court. Which brings me to tenants in common, which is where 2 or more people can own property together without any clause after their name there. They each own 1/2 interest. What that means is if John Smith passes away, his estate owns 1/2 interest in the property, and Mary would own the other 1/2 interest in the property. Or John could always sell his 1/2 interest in the property to say Bob, and then Bob becomes the owner of his 1/2 interest, and Mary still owns her other 1/2 interest. That one can get a little tricky sometimes. There's joint tenants, which is kind of common. That's where 2 or more people can own the property with full rights of survivorship. So Bob and Mary Smith, they own the property as joint tenants with full rights of survivorship. So once again, if Bob dies, Mary records the death certificate and she becomes the sole owner of the property. Like I said there, you see this common with moms and dads putting one of the kids' names in title, so if something happens, it doesn't have to go through probate court, that type of thing. Another common way to hold title is called a life estate. This is where you file a quitclaim deed with the Register of Deeds that says that for your lifetime, you have unrestricted powers to transfer the property anytime, which means you can sell it at any time. But however, upon your death, the property is conveyed to the following. It can be your trust, it could be to family members, a friend. So all they do is record your death certificate that with which we call a Lady Bird deed, becomes effective. However, like I said, at any time you sell the property, convey your interest out, that Lady Bird deed becomes ineffective. It's no longer valid. So sometimes we get a lot of these questions about we request certain things, so we're going to talk a little bit why we need those. Corporations, LCs, partnerships, trusts, estates, and principals require documentation. We have to make sure that the proper person is really selling the property that we're closing on. So your corporations, you hold the property into your corporation. We're going to ask for your articles of incorporation, any bylaws, your certificate of good standing with the state of Michigan or whichever state you file your corporation in. And if you're a foreign entity, we may require a certificate of authority. So what does that mean? We're going to review those documents. We're going to request a resolution from your board approving the sale and who can sign the documents. Or if you are the only party to your corporation, you are the president, secretary, treasurer, so forth, then your bylaws might spell that out, and then we're good. We don't have to have that resolution. Your bylaws will cover all that for us. LLCs are somewhat similar. We're going to ask for your articles of incorporation, your operating agreement. That's going to tell us who the members of the LLC are. It also tells us who has the power to sign or manage the LLC. And we need your certificate of good standing with the state that you're filed in. And if you're foreign, we're going to need that certificate of authority once again. So we're going to need, once again, a written consent which approves who can sign for the transaction, who has the right to sell the property, or your operating agreement or articles will spell that out for us. Sometimes LLCs, you have a sole member. You may not have your articles of incorporation because you were that sole member or agreement. So what we do is we have you sign an affidavit that states you are the sole member of that LLC, you're the only member, and then we'll accept that. Partnerships, Once again, very similar, we're gonna need your partnership agreement, your certificate of limited partnership or co-partnership, and the articles of partnership. What we're looking for is to see who's approved to sign for the transaction, or we need, that partnership agreement's gonna spell it out for us again. It's gonna tell us who can sign on behalf of the partnership. If both of you have to sign, or if one of you has the power over the other. Trust, we're gonna need your trust agreement, your certificate of trust. It's, what those two documents are gonna show us is the duties of the trustee and who has the power once again to sell. At closing, we're gonna record that certificate of trust along with your deed, because it shows that that deed, we had the valid person sign on behalf of the trust, if it's the trustee or the successor trustee. And the state. We always need the letter of authority, a personal representation to show who is legally obligated to sign on behalf of that trust. We may need various orders from the court. A lot of personal reps are limited. They can't sell the property until they've had court approval of the purchase agreement. And they're gonna have to get an order to sell, what we call an order to sell from the court, which gets recorded along with the deed as well. And your letters of authority sometimes. Same thing with a protected person. We're gonna need that letter from the court that shows who the conservator is or who has the authority to sign on behalf of the protected person. We're gonna need the probate court order approving that person selling anything from the estate. And those, always need original documents certified by the court. That's that little bumpy seal that gets recorded with the deed. Same thing with the legally incapacitated person. We're gonna need the guardianship orders from the court and the probate court order approving the sale and who can sign the deed. Those will all get recorded with the deed at the time. Principal, this is the power of attorney. We're gonna need that original power of attorney dictating who can sign on behalf of the principal of the property, who's been appointed, and that usually always gets recorded with our deed and mortgage. So does anybody have any questions about anything?
What about self-directed IRAs?
We do a lot of those. Usually we work with your IRA company and they get us the documentation that we need. A lot of times they require someone from the IRA company and you to sign the documents, but we do a lot of those.
Can a company buy like a home for, business purposes?
Yes.
And you can handle all that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We do a lot of investors have their LLCs. We do a lot of that stuff where they've got small corporations they hold their properties into.
Is there any pre-title work that can be done for properties that you're interested in a share sale?
Yes. We do a title search. Those cost $200 and we'll do those for you. Yep. We do have some people that come in on those, they know a property's coming up and we'll do those title searches for them, because that's gonna tell them whether they really wanna, if it's really worth it. You buy, because I've seen some that they've gone down, they've got burnt, they bought it for $5,000 and it was a condo. Well, the condo association has a lien against it. There's an IRS lien, several things, and they've gotta go pay that all off.
So that ends up to be what, $45,000?
Yeah, that they've had to, they're paying to sell the property at that point in time. Yeah. Anything else?
Is the search also 2 to 3 weeks?
It depends.
No.
We usually get them done within 5 days. Yeah.
If you need something also that's more expedited for some reason, like you have a situation, a problem that you're concerned about, and you want it done quickly, we can always rush it. We don't normally charge for something like that, but, you know, on an average, like you said, it's 3 to 5 working days. So.
It's just the tax title one that takes us a little bit longer because we do have to go to our underwriters. Then when I say underwriters, like Stewart Title or First American Title, their attorneys are taking looks at all of that to clear that up. So it does take a little bit of time on those ones. But if you're just looking at something for sheriff's sale at the Register of Deeds office, we could probably pop it out within 5 days.
Is that tax title search kind of like a quiet title?
Somewhat, yes.
Well, yes and no.
Yes and no, yes and no.
Okay.
This is why he's here.
Because when we examine it, when we look at it, we may not be able to clear title.
Yeah, we may not be able to
So
clear
that's
title.
not, the quieting title is where you actually have to hire your attorney, you go to court, they notify everyone with an interest. We're trying to, because in some cases, we can go through and examine and determine that that problem doesn't exist, and we can insure.
Okay.
So we're trying to save you money, because if you go through a quieting title situation, you're looking at a lot more expensive cost to it versus this type of scenario where we can, because there are certain things we can find and determine if that's an insurable piece of property without quieting it.
Okay.
Yep. All right.
That is the purpose, is ultimately, Wayne want a piece of property that can be insured, because that way when we sell it.
Exactly. And that would be one thing that I would want to mention, is that, you know, as when you're looking at purchasing properties to rent and things of that nature, some people are like, I want the least amount to spend in order to get this into my name. And so sometimes people bypass the things that would protect them. Like, sometimes people think, I don't need title insurance. And I would say, well, I guess that depends on your investment. Because if you're buying something for not a lot of money, and you don't think there's a possible loss, meaning somebody wasn't served, and they have an interest, and they come into play and say, you didn't, where we're talking like with the tax sale properties, right? Oh, they're clear, I got a deed. No, you got a quitclaim deed. It isn't clear. And so somebody else's interest shows up, and you think you own the home, but you don't. You have the municipality's interest, but you don't have the previous party who has an interest. They still own it. So all of a sudden, you think you can start renting it out, and somebody comes in and you find out you don't own it, well then, you're gonna lose your investment. So that's why we say, you know, Steph did a great job of giving you a lot of explanations, like title law, which it may go over some people's heads, but like when you're gonna purchase a piece of property and we examine it, these are the things, these are the requirements, many of them are the requirements we may have to do. Many of them wouldn't even occur in a lot of situations. The bottom line is, that's what your title insurance company is there for, to make sure all those things we showed you are taken care of properly. You have to determine, as an investor, do I need title insurance on this? Because we know some people go, well, I checked it myself and I found out who the deed holder was, and so it's clear. Is it clear, or were they only one party who had an interest? You know, were there 4 parties who it was conveyed through an estate, but there was really a 5th? I mean, so you're really taking a risk, and if it's a high investment, I would say always get title insurance. Because it might seem expensive, but that $500 to $1,000 investment might save you $50,000. So, go ahead.
So, 10 years ago, I bought a house. It was, a house that only cost me a couple $100. Title insurance was, I think, $250, and I didn't do it. 4 months ago, I sold the house for $30-something thousand. And when they did the title search on it, the lien never showed up, because it was a certain type of lien, and it only showed up when you followed back on the person's name.
Right.
So the initial title company, when I pulled title work, because I used to pull title work on everything, but I was a cheap guy that wasn't investing the money back then, it never showed up.
Right.
Then now I go to sell the house, and it shows up. I sold the house for $30,000, and it was a $32,000 lien. So the title company, because I owned it for so long and nothing ever come back, and we went back and forth with the banks, which it took an extra month to do this, and this was tied up with someone's 1031 exchange, and it was a huge mess under time constraints. And because of all the whole thing, they made me sign a waiver saying that they would insure the house for him, but if they ever came back, it comes back on me. So because I already told the guy that I was gonna do this, and I already had all his money tied up, I signed a waiver.
And what they did is make you liable for that.
Make me liable.
And they took it out, and I don't blame them.
But if I would've, if I would've followed through.
Right, you wouldn't have that problem, because
I would never
what
have
I was
that
gonna
problem.
say is if you hired a title company and they insured it and they missed
Then
it,
it'd been them.
then it goes on them. So that's the key, you know, why do you want title insurance? Because if it's a major investment,
Everything is title insurance now.
Well, it's, I mean, my opinion, you know, I own the title company, right? I've been there for 34 years, but I'm still gonna check my own title. You know, I mean, it's like if I'm gonna do it, why would someone who doesn't have that ability? I mean, we own our own title plan. It goes back 150 years. We have access that none of you would have. I'm still gonna check it. And I'm really gonna check it when I have an investment, money coming out of my pocket. So I would just, you know, whether you spend 5,000 on it or 100,000 on it or more, it's ridiculous not to protect yourself. Because all these situations we showed you will never be your problem if it's insured.
So,
It'll be our problem.
you know, when I foreclose on a property, I always get, if the owner wants to give me a quitclaim deed rather than me taking to court, I always get a title search at least.
To make
Because a lot of times you'll get this property back without going through the court, and you get whatever liens the guy had on it.
Right.
And in one case, the guy had been in a traffic accident, and he had a $200,000 judgment against him on a $50,000 house, you know. So it always pays to get a title search or insurance, much like a title search, when you're in the process of getting a house back that you sold on a land contract without going through the courts. Very important.
Well, and especially, Henry, in a case like where you may sell a land contract, because I had a friend, I mean, he was my friend, and I said, this is not smart of you to do this. He sold on contract, didn't get enough money down, and he had to go through forfeiture and take it back. So instead, he did like you said, he went and got a quitclaim deed, but there was back taxes, and the people didn't have the money, and he said, well, just give me a deed. So guess who's responsible for the back taxes?
He is.
He is.
He paid them. And I'm like, well, that was a smart investment. You just lost $4,500. So, yeah, I mean, all these things, and that would be the one big thing that I feel like us coming in and talking to you as investors and landlords is the necessity in title insurance. Because a lot of people think, oh, that's a waste of money. I already looked, I know who's entitled. Well, if you want to take the risk, fine. But for a small fee, you know you're insured. So, I would say, quite honestly, if you have any questions, you know, there's many good title companies around. None of them are as good as us. We've been in business for 53 years. We're locally owned and operated. We're based in downtown Flint, but we do have an office on Torrey Road. So anyway, my point is if you do have questions, that's what we're here for. Feel free to give us a call. You know, we don't, unlike attorneys, we don't charge for our opinions. We can't give you legal opinions, but we can give you our opinion. So if you do have questions down the line, if you do have properties you're interested in, you want title searches on them, they're $200. They'll give you at least a rough idea. If you want a more extensive search, we can do that as well.
Real quickly, Erin's gonna do your 50-50, but we also brought a gift, a thank you for you guys. So if you guys just wanna take and write your name on a piece of paper there, we'll come around and collect it and.
A free title search?
No, I didn't go that high.
I'll try.
If you want to, you're the boss.
You know, I think that's not legally, or that's not really considered a financial inducement. The other thing I would like to tell you too, and I don't know if other companies will provide this, but if you pay a $200 search for it and you purchase the property through us, we will take that $200 and apply it towards your title insurance policy. So if it's a $500 policy, you've already paid $200, it'll only be $300 at closing. So I don't know if others do that, but it's just a way to kind of recover that search fee.